Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramhamsa Vivajakacharya Stottara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramhamsa Vivajakacharya Stottara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaja Prabhupada Ki Jai. Santaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Devamrita Swami Tanamani Prachar Purvaraksham Cha Bhakta Char Vivinta Bharata Tapi Karunyam Yasya Sarve Jitenama Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachayane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyani Shatayane Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the King of Books, Krantaraj, the fifth canto, chapter 8, about the character of Maharaja Bharata, text number 15.
Yes.
Yes, text number 15. Anyada brisham udvigna mana nashtadravina iva kripanaha sakuranam attitarshena harina kunaka viraha vibhala hridaya santapas tam evanushochan kilakashmalam mahad abhirambitha iti hovacha. Word for word translation says, Anyada, sometimes, not seeing the calf. Brisham, very much. Udvigna manaha, his mind full of anxiety. Nashta dravinaha, who has lost his riches. Eva, like Kripanaha, a miserly man. Sakarunam, hideously. Atitarshena, with great anxiety. Harina kunaka, from the calf of the deer. Viraha, by separation. Vivala, agitated. Hridaya, in mind or heart. Santapaha, whose affliction. That calf. Eva, only. Anushochan, continuously thinking of. Kila, certainly. Tashmalam, illusion. Mahat, very great. Abhirambitaha, obtained. Iti, thus. Ha, certainly. Uvacha, said. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. If Bharat Maharaj sometimes could not see the deer, his mind would be very agitated. He would become like a miser who, having obtained some riches, had lost them and had then become very unhappy. When the deer was gone, he would be filled with an anxiety and would lament due to separation. Thus he would become illusioned and speak as follows. So we'll hear what he says in the next verse. Next verses, of course. Srila Prabhupada's purport says, if a poor man loses some money or gold, he at once becomes very agitated. Similarly, the mind of Maharaj Bharat would become agitated when he did not see the deer. This is an example of how our attachment can be transferred. If our attachment is transferred to the Lord's service, we progress. Srila Rupa Goswami prayed to the Lord that he would be as naturally attracted to the Lord's service as young men and young women are naturally attracted to each other. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited such attachment to the Lord when he jumped into the ocean or cried at night in separation. However, If our attachment is diverted to material things instead of to the Lord, we will fall down from the spiritual platform. Brilliant purport by Srila Prabhupada, making the parallels between Bharat Maharaj's attachment for the deer and what should be our attachment for the Lord. Brilliant insight, as always. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So Bharat Maharaj, when he couldn't see the deer, his mind would become very agitated. Where's my deer? I wonder if he had a name for the deer. Was that mentioned anywhere? I think there's reference to him calling it my sweet or something like that. My deer calf. If he gave a name to the deer. But anyway, when he could not see the deer, he'd be thinking, where is that deer? My deer calf. He'd become like a miser who, having obtained some riches, and lost them and become very unhappy. Now, keep in mind that at this point, Bharat Maharaj has not lost the deer. He hasn't lost the deer. Only for a few moments would the deer be out of his sight. He'd be trying to do his meditation, closing his eyes, focusing on the Lord, but then he couldn't see the deer, and he would be agitated. This is very desperate and very pathetic. And although we're making comparisons in these, as we're having classes about these verses, we're making lots of comparisons to our own selves and our own attachments, we should recognize that for most of us, we never get this deep, fortunately. It's unfortunate that we never feel enough attachment or attraction to anything significant to feel such intense separation. As Kali Yuga is an age of quarrel, hypocrisy, and I would like to amend the Shastric definition of Kali Yuga by saying it's also an age of apathy. We just don't feel very strongly about anything, unfortunately. And I guess to our benefit, we should even have very serious attachment to any particular material thing. So although we struggle with attachment for some things, we should know that most of the time, we never become quite as desperate as Bharat Maharaj is exhibiting in these verses here. This is an extreme example, and we learn from extreme examples. To give us some insight into how intense and really quite pathetic this attachment was for Bharat Maharaj, the comparison is made to someone who's very poor but then attained some riches and lost it again. We can only imagine. In fact, I don't have to imagine too much. I've had some small experience with a few, what is the politically correct way to put it? A few investments that were briefly very successful. And then and then not so much. And it can be very intense to gain a lot and to lose a lot. But don't worry, everybody, I still made out all right in the end. So that experience of having so little and then suddenly gaining so much wealth, gold or money, feeling that potential, there's so much potential enjoyment here, and then to immediately lose it, we can imagine just how painful that could be, how intense. People are so obsessed with the American dream of rapid increase in finances. That's the real American dream. It's how to get as much money with as little work as possible. People become so obsessed with it that they gamble away fortunes, that they take risks which are so unreasonable and end up killing themselves over it. So if we're trying to understand what is that level of anxiety that Bharat Maharaj is feeling, we should look to compare to people who literally killed themselves because they gained a lot of money and then lost it suddenly. Uh, we're all familiar, of course, with the examples of the what was it called? The Black Tuesday, they called it, some very famous stock market crash in the 20s, which sent young men, young Wall Street professionals, hurling themselves out the windows of skyscrapers to kill themselves. Hare Krishna. Just because in a few moments they had lost so much. Probably, I don't know the history of these individuals and what exactly was their assets or their net worth at the time, but they probably still had a lot more than the people on the streets that they threw themselves down towards. But still, they had a feeling like they've lost everything valuable and threw themselves out the window. And unfortunately, that still goes on today. Actually, there's modern examples of similar things where young people they take very risky investments and then they lose a lot and they'll actually kill themselves. There was a very famous story, unfortunately, it happened just a few years ago. A young boy, he's only like 17 or 18, and he was gambling away some money in the stock market, and he lost big. And at only 17 or 18 years old, he took his own life. And he was like from a middle class family. It wasn't like he was poor, but just that intense feeling that I gained something so valuable and then lost it is so extreme and so intense. And that's what Bharat Maharaj is feeling here. This is a level of attachment that, fortunately, we don't often have for anything of this material world. But still, we should understand the example, and we should understand the parallel being made by Srila Prabhupada in the purport to the intense attachment that a devotee feels for Krishna. That's what we long for, this sort of agitated attachment for material things. That's embarrassing and painful, full of anxiety and suffering. But that same feeling invested in the Lord's service is something so magical, so amazing. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text number 22, I think, not so good with the numbers, but Krishna seems to imply that one should also have anxiety, agitation about his service. Prabhupada coined this Krishna anxiety, like when Mother Yashoda is worrying about Krishna as he's walking through the forest and whether or not he'll step on some stones or something, or if he has enough to eat. It's called Krishna anxiety. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Ananyas chintayantumam ye jana parupasate tesham something something something. Hold on. Rama Rama Hare Hare. What is that? Yes. Ananyas chintayantumam ye jana parupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshema bhamya. He says, those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. The word used, chintayanto, chinta. Chinta means to concentrate, to focus. In other places, it actually means to have anxiety. Where does it mean anxiety? Oh, I'd have to whip out my Sanskrit dictionary. Just take my word for it right now, because I'm not going to go through all that effort at this moment. Pachinta also means anxiety, stress. To be stressed for the Lord is actually wonderful devotional service. And it's a flavor of existence that we should get a taste for. Because otherwise there will be stress and anxiety over material things, embarrassing material things like Bharat Maharaj. That's why Srila Prabhupada's making the parallel in this purport. If we are not stressed for Krishna, we'll stress about our bank account, we'll stress about the properties, we'll stress about those tiny, tiny little things in this material universe that we can control. We'll be in anxiety about them, frustrated, worried, feeling the separation. Oh, where's my stuff? Or we can be stressed for Krishna. Obviously, that is the superior choice. And that's why Prabhupada's making very clear. What does he say? This is an example of how our attachment can be transferred. So we have attachment for things, but we transfer that attachment to the Lord. The transferring process is very simple. There's a very simple technique. It's like a code. I'm going to teach you how to do it right now. You ready? How to transfer attachment to the Lord. You simply repeat these words. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're chanting Krishna's names. We're begging for service to Krishna. It's a type of anxiety. Please, Krishna, let me be engaged in your devotion service and not in the service of illusion. That's how we transfer our attachment to the service of the Lord, by very attentive chanting. We don't just want to be doing the service externally with our body, although that is glorious, but to have that same emotional dynamic and even anxiety for devotional service. That's what we beg for when we're chanting Krishna's names. We have that extreme attachment, infatuation, and obsession with serving Krishna, with love, with affection, always improving the quality of the service. It's like Bharat Maharaj is thinking, where's the deer? How can I take care of it? It needs me. But we were thinking about Krishna like that. Where is Krishna? How can I take care of him? He needs me. Maybe sometimes we get a slight glimpse, a feeling like, oh, Krishna needs me. Of course, Krishna is Adi Purusha. He's a Swayam Purusha. He's totally independent, original person. He doesn't need us. But he can reciprocate with our love such that we even get the feeling like he needs us. That's how expert Krishna is in reciprocating love. We can really get the feeling. We can really get the feeling like he needs us. So Prabhupada's saying we have to transfer this attachment to the Lord's service. Then we progress. If our attachment is transferred to the Lord's service, we progress. This is what Prabhupada said in the purport here. So you want to progress in bhakti, you need to transfer attachment to the Lord's service. We know what attachment is like. We know what it's like to be attentive, to be focused on something, right? Early in the morning, especially here at Gitanagari, it's a little chilly in the winter. Early in the morning, you go to take a shower. We're so attentive to those knobs and dials to get just the right temperature, right? Even though we're drowsy, you can't make the excuse that, well, it's early, I just woke up and I'm a little drowsy and I'm tired. We're so attentive. You got to get just that right temperature. We're focused. I don't know if anyone have ever noticed yourselves doing this. Eyes closed, holding the hot and cold dials, meditating. We're so attentive. We know what it's like to be so focused and attentive. But we have to transfer that attentive attachment and attraction to Krishna's service. We know what it's like to speak very clearly when we want something. If there's a big feast going on, amazing prasadam being served, right? Then we're so attentive. And we express it very clearly. We say, Prabhu, More pakoras, please. More chutney. No rice. Rice is a waste of space. Give me more halava, right? We speak so clearly, so attentively. We know what it's like to do it, but we have to transfer that attachment to the Lord's service. It's so easy for us to be very attentive and to pronounce the words so clearly when we're talking about prasadam. But can we be similarly attentive when chanting Krishna's names? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. What we're really saying is, my dear Lord Sri Sri Radha Damodar, please engage me in your service. Let me transfer that attachment to your service. So it's very easy for us to be attentive. It's very easy for us to be focused. It's very easy for us to be obsessed with something, possessed by something. When we transfer that attachment to Lord's service, then we progress. That's what Prabhupada says here. Srila Rupa Goswami prayed to the Lord that he would be as naturally attracted to the Lord's service as young men and young women are naturally attracted to each other. You don't need to read a book, right? When you go through puberty, you don't need to like read a book about why women are attractive. It just happens. It's spontaneous. It's powerful. It's dynamic. Rupa Goswami is saying, in the same way, may I be attracted to Krishna. He says, Yuva, what does he say? Yuvatinam yata yuni, yunam cha yuvatao yata, manobiramate tadvan, manome ramatam tvai. This is how Rupa Goswami is praying, because he understands. It's that same principle of attachment. I want it to be transferred to you, Lord. He says, just as the minds of young girls take pleasure in young boys, and young boys take pleasure in young girls, kindly allow my mind to take pleasure in you alone. This purport is just so wonderful because it makes a very clear parallel for us. We know what it's like to be attracted to the opposite sex. For some people, the same sex. It's spontaneous. It doesn't take a lot of justification, philosophical contemplation. Well, I find this girl to be attractive because of this, because of that. It just happens. And you're just thrust into this overwhelming feeling like, I gotta have it. That's how Lord Chaitanya feels in connection with Krishna. That's how Rupa Goswami feels in connection with Krishna. I gotta have it. Spontaneous attraction and attachment. I just gotta have it. Gotta serve Krishna. I need it. Give me some more, please. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice for us? So I guess the point that's being made here in this purport is that the advanced stages of devotional service are not foreign to us. It's not some mystery. It's not some magic. It's the same attachment, the same attraction. It's just that the object is Krishna. So we don't have to be confused about what is it like to be very advanced in devotional service. We know what it's like. We know what it's like to be attached to something, to be obsessed with something, to be possessed, devoted. Haribo. But if we make Krishna the object of that devotion, then we're in advanced Krishna consciousness. So as Prabhupada says, progressed Krishna consciousness. So nowadays, there's such a push for progressiveness. We all want to be progressive. How do we progress in bhakti? Just by transferring that attachment to Krishna. It's such a simple thing, but so profound. So that's why we're so fortunate. Hare Krishna. Dobry utro. That's why we're so fortunate to hear this example of Bharat Maharaj. We should know by reading this verse in particular that we're not as desperate as Bharat Maharaj. There's hardly anything in this world that we felt so attached to, fortunately. Although we struggle with some things, we don't become nearly as anxious as Bharat Maharaj is in this verse. But still, what we're learning from these verses and from these purports is that this is what attachment to Krishna should look like. And that principle of attachment is very clear to us. It's not foreign, it's not a mystery. We simply have to make Krishna the object of our obsession, of our possession. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited such attachment to the Lord when he jumped into the ocean and cried at night in separation. We read of this in the Antya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita. In the later pastimes, the final pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, that while exhibiting that intense feeling of separation from the Lord, just like Bharat Maharaj is feeling separated from the deer. He said, "Where's my deer? Where's that deer calf?" Lord Chaitanya would experience such intense separation that we would run out into the middle of the night. He'd jump into the ocean thinking that it was the Jamuna River, thinking that he will find Krishna and the gopis gallivanting there. Or at night, he would Hare Krishna. It's hard for me to even describe since I don't fully understand, but in the room where he was staying, the apartment of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he would scratch it, right? Wasn't he in the apartment of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya? Lena Madhuri would know if he's here. He would be feeling such intense anxiety and separation from the Lord that he would scratch his face against the wall until he was bloodied. Now, I don't recommend any devotees do that because it's not very good for our preaching to have a bunch of devotees with their faces scratched up. But we should know that that's what the potential of our attachment to the Lord is such that there's incredible bodily transformations and exhibitions. So Lord Chaitanya and so many great devotees that we read about in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, they're exhibiting the symptoms of that intense attachment for the Lord, making the Lord the object of their affection, the object of their intense meditation. And if we don't do that, Prabhupada finishes this purport by saying, however, if our attachment is diverted to material things instead of the Lord, we will fall down from the spiritual platform. It's interesting how Prabhupada is implying in this sentence here that originally our attachment is for the Lord. It is diverted to material things. We're thinking, I need to divert my attachment from material things to the original object, to Krishna. But Prabhupada is saying, no, the original object is where we are diverted. We've diverted from Krishna. We fall down from the spiritual platform when we are diverted to material things. So we got to be very careful, of course. Maintain our attachment to the Lord by always hearing and chanting in the association of devotees who have intense attachment for Krishna's service. And that will become the norm. If we're hearing from people who are attached to material things, then that will become the norm. It's really that simple. Krishna consciousness is so simple. We just love to make it complicated because it's Kali Yuga. If we're hearing from people who are attached to material things, then that will become the norm for us. When we pick up our little rectangles of doom, what is it that Prabhu was saying the other day about our phones? First, we hardly even use them as phones. We use them more for Maya than we use them as actual phone for making phone calls. Who makes phone calls anymore? So when we pick up our little rectangles of distraction, then we're allowing persons to divert our attention away from the Lord. And if we're hearing instead from devotees who have intense attachment for Krishna, then that will be the norm. It will be so obvious, so self-evident that the object of our affection should be Krishna. So, the science of attachment is very nicely described in these verses about Bharat Maharaj. We should take comfort knowing that most of us will never become so desperately pathetic in attachment to a material thing like Bharat Maharaj is exhibiting here. But still, it's so important for us to learn from this example about what real attachment for the Lord should look like. That the solution is to divert one's attention to the supreme object, Lord Krishna, who is so attractive, especially here at Gitanagari. It's just so easy to come and take darshan, Sri Sri Radha Damodar. to appreciate the way that he's dressed, the way that he stands, the way that he holds his flute, the way that he's always surrounded by his devotees. It's just so easy for us to do. So let us take advantage of all that great ease and engage in Krishna's devotional service 24 hours a day. Hare Krishna, Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Any comments or retorts or additions to some of this stuff before I have to run off and try to please Krishna with some hard labor? Supreme about Bhagavatam class?
What?
Oh, cool. Well, come on up and
Is it on your lap?
yeah, I guess so. It's bona fide. Shiva and Parvati do it.
Oh, fresh. You're so small. So, okay. So I'm what? That's too weird.
Is that too much? All
What?
right.
Can you just explain about this app? Thank you very much. By the way, thank you. But can you explain about this apathy and yeah, I guess just why we have this apathy in this modern age, and how we can. Hmm, yeah, because I'm thinking things are so wild in this Kali Yuga, and we're just disappointed so much. I think that's why we're reluctant to invest our hearts in things because our inadequacies, just the overall, atmosphere of inadequacy. So a lot of times we're let down, and so we're like, yeah, we're afraid to like invest our hearts in things. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, if you could just
No, so true.
yeah, sure.
It's so true. I'm making the claim that Kali Yuga is the age of hypocrisy, quarrel, and also apathy. Um, as Gurudev was saying to us recently, His Holiness Devamrita Swami was talking about how the largest religious group, the fastest growing religious group in the world is the apatheists. It's simply, I don't care. I just don't care. And, I see this all the time. And I know you're tired of me saying that I see this all the time at Penn State, but especially the young people, the Gen Z today, the apathy levels are just off the charts. People are so apathetic. They don't feel a lot of positivity in their future. They struggle with relationships. A lot of people just don't even try. There's less relationships in the younger generation than there's ever been. So the apathy is just incredible. It's amazing how apathetic some people have become. Just no enthusiasm, even just to finish their degrees. And a lot of it might be because of how overwhelming, the Maya is and Kali Yuga. It's just, you just have access to everything everywhere at all times. And it can be really overwhelming. We just constantly have this experience, this feeling like there's so much more and it's not right here. And that causes people to be apathetic. Like I can never get something good enough, when all you see all the time is that everywhere else there's something better. It causes people to check out, to become apathetic. Like, I'm just not even going to try if I can't win. So economically, a lot of people feel like that because there's so much more inequality than in recent decades. So a lot of people feel like I can't even win, so why try? In fact, I just saw an interesting article about the number of, you've all heard this term quiet quitting. If you work in any sort of industry, you've heard of the term quiet quitting, which is when people just do the bare minimum in a job, right? How about Demaya? When you do the bare minimum at your workplace, that's called quiet quitting. I think everybody's heard this term before. And now there's new statistics about loud quitting. Not just people doing the bare minimum because they are apathetic, because they don't feel like I'm really benefiting from this. I get paid only so little, and there's really isn't a future for me in this job. So let me just do the bare minimum. Bare minimum. That's called quiet quitting. Now there's statistics about loud quitting, where people are so jaded by their profession that they don't just do the bare minimum, but they'll even what is it? directly harm an organization, undercut its goals, oppose its leaders, just because they don't feel like there's any hope here. There's no future for me in this occupation or in this institution or whatever. And according to statistics from Gallup, a huge polling organization, they say 1 in 5 employees worldwide are loud quitting at their jobs. And then you add that, they said 18% of employees are loud quitting, 59% are quiet quitting. And so Gallup estimates that low employee engagement in the workplace costs the global economy 8.8 trillion and accounts for 9% of the global GDP. These are some statistics about apathy. So people aren't working hard. And why? Because they don't feel like there's a benefit from it. I don't feel like there's a benefit from my effort, which means it's a great time to just get into Krishna consciousness because the Lord reciprocates. If we really sacrifice for the Lord, He reciprocates with the ecstasy of devotion. So, yes, as I was saying, I think that Kali Yuga is the age of hypocrisy, quarrel, and apathy. The statistics are there, and it's like a disease, really. If we feel apathy in our devotional service, there's a very easy remedy for that. A very, very easy remedy. You find a person who just bounces up and down in kirtan, dripping in sweat with tears in their eyes, and you just say, Prabhu, how can I be, be in Krishna consciousness like you? How can I just be ecstatic like you? You got to give up a little bit of our pride and just ask a devotee, how is it that you're just so ecstatic in devotional service? How are you so happy in Krishna consciousness? Ask how to engage in service. That's the principle of bhakti. So yeah, apathy is a real thing. I mean, it's a real issue going on in the world, and it's happening all over the place. And which means it's a great time for us to share Krishna consciousness with people who obviously feel like they're not going to get a good return from their effort in the workplace. We can help these people to know that if you invest your heart in Krishna's service, you will be satisfied. If you invest your heart for some corporate CEO, you're not going to get what you're expecting. They will easily replace you. But to Krishna, we are invaluable. Krishna loves us all so much, and he can reciprocate with our effort so much. So it's a good time to share Krishna consciousness with the world. Hare Krishna. I hope that somewhat addresses your concern. Shriman Dasya Prema Prabhu. Apathy is an infectious disease that's spreading all over the world, especially amongst young people. And it's really important for us to share the ecstasy of Krishna Bhakti with them. Any other comments or retorts or challenges to some of these points? Oh, Godruma commented that in Bhakti Marg Swami's production, which Godruma was in, by the way, he's quite the thespian. You can find it on YouTube, Godruma on stage. Were you doing this drama, Godruma Prabhu? He says in Bhakti Marg Swami's production, Bharat named the deer Raja. Bharat is Maharaja, so his child is Raja. Okay. Thank you for that brilliant insight, Sriman. I don't know if he can hear me, if he can confirm that he was in that particular play. Hare Krishna. Oh, Taraka Prabhu, would you like to take us home?
Sure. Did I understand that you have a need to take off? Are you short of time?
No, this is more fun. I gotta go pull the cart out and move a bunch of stuff, so this is a lot nicer.
Okay. So my observation of the issue of apathy is that the people are apathetic not so much because they feel as though they're not going to get a sufficient return on their investment, but that their experience is that when they do invest themselves in whatever it may be, the experience is not just disappointing, but painful. It's actually painful. Anytime they invest themselves in anything, the net result is always misery. It's always pain. And that's like an axiomatic truth about material life, that whatever you invest yourself in is always going to be fraught with misery, with pain. And this is having trouble today trying to gather my thoughts. Bear with me here, but it's a worthwhile meditation. It helps us to understand and incentivize ourselves when we understand the difference between attachment for material objects and attachment for Krishna. The effect is profoundly different. Same action of attachment, all of the oh gosh, I can't think of the word. The action is essentially the same, but the effect is completely different. When you develop attachments for anything material, the result is pain. It becomes painful. When you if some, let's say, for example, in a relationship, something is not going right in the relationship. Boy and a girl, man and a woman get into an argument. They get into some kind of a fight, and what happens? The two of them are deep in meditation on one another and what has happened. Their mind is reeling, and it's fixed with an intensity, an extraordinary intensity. They're thinking very, very intently, and the result of that meditation is a burning of the heart, terrible pain. The heart chakra is overloaded and producing a terrible burning sensation. The same kind of intense meditation on Krishna has a completely different effect. Rather than producing incredible anxiety and pain, there is a complete relief from all anxiety and an experience of ecstasy. Very different effect, but otherwise the mechanics of the attachment are very similar. So it's interesting. Anyway, those were some of my thoughts, and I had lots more, but I don't know. My cognitive functions are failing me today. They're not really working well. I have a question for you, which you may not be able to answer, but I am puzzling over. Srila Prabhupada is making reference to this verse, Yuvatinam Yata Yuni, which he would often refer to in lectures, or maybe not so often, but famously he did. And in the he often credits Rupa Goswami as having written this. But and in one instance he credits Jiva Goswami with quoting it along with some other verses. But I find
it might be from the Vishnu Purana.
Right. That's my point, that in numerous places in the books it is cited as having come from Vishnu Purana. So I'm wondering if you have any insight as to what's going on there, because obviously if it's from Vishnu Purana, it wasn't written by Rupa Goswami, it might have been quoted by him, but in more than one instance Srila Prabhupada attributes this verse to Rupa Goswami. So I was just
Yes,
wondering.
I totally understand. And in my notes also, I actually wrote Vishnu Purana, but I took these notes years ago, so I can't remember what was the reference even for this. But according to my notes, yes, it's also Vishnu Purana, first canto, chapter 20, text 19. Although I do recall Prabhupada referencing or accrediting it to Rupa Goswami several times. Um, believe it or not, it's possible Prabhupada was just slightly mistaken. It is okay to make mistakes about numbers. It doesn't make him any less the Acharya. Or perhaps, our editors, our book editors, publish it as a reference to Vishnu Purana incorrectly. I don't have an answer for you. I think one of
That
our
was my
super
thought,
Shastric
because
scholars will have to look into it.
I've seen this happen before in the database. Ekanath has added a bunch of references all over, and but once they're there, it's just assumed by the devotees that this is
Mhm.
accurate and correct,
Right.
and
It might be incorrect.
sometimes there are mistakes.
Yeah.
So
And it
I
certainly sounds like Rupa Goswami's verse. It doesn't really sound like a Vishnu Purana verse, which would be full of philosophy. It sounds like something that Rupa Goswami writes also.
Yeah, there is in the 11th canto, Hridayananda Maharaj is he mentions this particular verse and a few others, which he explains were quoted by Jiva Goswami. And it appears to me that that the specific reference, Vishnu Purana 1:2019, is in this particular purport attributed to a different verse. But then the following verse in the purport is the Yuvatinam Yata Yuni. And I think it's possible that from that purport, someone got the mistaken idea, because the two kind of run together, and you could make the mistake easily of thinking that Yuvatinam Yata Yuni is coming from Vishnu Purana. But I don't know.
We'll have to ask Jayadvaita Swami.
Pardon?
Perhaps we need to ask Jayadvaita Swami.
Yeah, he might know. Those particular references in the 11th canto, by the way, are interesting and closely related to today's discussion. And since we have a few minutes, I would like to read what Hridayananda Maharaj wrote there. He said,
Sure. Please share.
I'm excerpting here, but he says, in this regard, Srila Jiva Goswami has quoted several verses that very nicely show the development of love of Godhead. Anena Dharasana Dukha Darshena Sa Karuna Maya Karunam Karotu. May the merciful Lord show mercy on me by demonstrating the misery created by sinful desires. Ya Pratir Avivekanam Vishayesh Vanapayini Tvam Anush Marata Same Hridayan Na Pasarpatu. Unintelligent persons have unflinching affection for the objects of sense gratification. Similarly, may I always remember you, so that that same attachment applied to you never leaves my heart. And this he attributes to Vishnu Purana 1:2019. Then he says, Yuvatinam yata yuni, yunam cha yuvatao yata, mano bharamate tadvan mano me ramatam tvayi, as the minds of young girls take pleasure in thinking of a young boy, and those of young boys take pleasure in thinking of a young girl, may my mind take pleasure in you. And then mama sukarmani duskarmani cha yad raga saman samanyam tad sarvato bhavena bhagavad vishayan eva bhavatu. Whatever attraction I have for pious or sinful activities, let that attraction be wholeheartedly invested in you. So and why? Because that same attachment, when we invest it in Krishna, that's our perfection, and the result is ecstatic. We don't do it for that reason, but that's the effect. That's the side effect. So, and pure devotional service is one thing, but in our early stages of the cultivation of Krishna consciousness, it is sometimes helpful to consider the side effects, which are not the goal, the objective, but when you're steeped in material existence and suffering unspeakably terrible stress and anxiety and desperate for solutions, it's a wonderful incentive to meditate on Krishna, to hear and chant his names, when you understand that by doing that, the result is a mitigation of that stress and anxiety. And it can be experienced practically. So for many of us, it forms the basis of the beginning of our progress in Krishna consciousness. May not be pure motivation, but it serves as a useful incentive, and then gradually purity develops from there by the practice of hearing and chanting. So anyway, it's a nice purport.
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, you called them side effects, but they can also be considered symptoms of our progress. If we
Right.
experience ecstasy, that detachment from material things, these are symptoms that Krishna consciousness is working as intended. Obviously, that's not our goal, to get the symptoms. Our goal is to please Krishna. So yeah, thank you for sharing. That's could you tell me which verse and purport that is you were reading from?
Yes, I could. Shall I?
Please, and
Of
then we
course.
will wrap
Yes,
up, because I think
it's
the Lord is going to
11th
make himself
canto,
known.
2nd chapter, text 36.
11:2:36. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing,
So
Prabhu.
many wonderful purports. Once upon a time, as a young bhakta, I noticed some of my god siblings highlighting points in Srila Prabhupada's purports. And I thought, what a great idea, because there's so many things I'd like to remember and to be able to reference them again later on. No computers or phones at the time, we just had the books. So I got a highlighter and started highlighting some things. And it wasn't long before I realized the uselessness of this practice, because as I read, I discovered that everything needed to be highlighted. I couldn't find anything that did not deserve a highlight. So in a few pages, everything in every purport was highlighted. And then I realized, all right, this is ridiculous, because it's all wonderful. Every bit of it is wonderful and extraordinary. There's nothing extraneous.
Yes, Prabhu.
All right. Hare
Absolutely
Krishna,
right.
thank you for your nice class.
Thank you for sharing your enthusiasm for hearing and chanting Srimad Bhagavatam, and demonstrating that enthusiasm by always being present at Bhagavatam class. You really are exemplary for all of us, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
And now we will feast our eyes upon the form of the Lord. So thank you everyone for participating and listening this morning. Bharata Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Haribo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Do I usually just put this over here? Hare Ram, Hare Ram,
Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki, Shri Radha Krishna Bhakta Shamakun Radha Giri Govardhan Ki, Vrindavan Dham Ki, Mathura Dham Ki, Navadvip Dham Ki, Raghunath Puri Dham Ki, Ithanagari Dham Ki, Gangamai Munamai Ki, Tulasidevi Bhakti Devi Ki, Samaveta Bhaktavinda Ki, Nitai Gaura Ki, all glories to the Son of God. All glories to His heart and Lord, as loves and emotions. All glories to Shri Lord God, all glories to Shri Lord. Well, let's speak about the virtual mountains. The only way that we can pay for the service. About that, we have a journey with the air from the ocean. By his grace, and across the ocean, and still the sun. It's not the speed of the solution. However, wishes that my consciousness purified by the words of the become my solution. Passion, assurance, action of the soul, and by the moment of your by that, by the those by the art of consciousness and movement. You run over for a chapter. I'm really excited. I'm going to very special out control last also this is designer all about all masters from university materials in US the famous spread all over the team we take them from the divine grace and that tarnish me from the balance. Krishna